Hi, I'm Celine, and we're here on the day 3 of the Church of Pentecost National Youth Conference, 2015, of course. I'm here with Tim Alford, who happens to be from Elim Pentecostal Church. Tim, it's an honour to meet you. Could you tell us a bit more about yourself, please?
Yeah, hey Celine, so pleased to be here. It's my first time at National Youth Conference and I'm loving it so far. So I'm Tim, I'm married to Jen, got a little boy called Tobiah, and I have this huge privilege of heading up Serious for God, which is the National Youth Department of Elim Pentecostal Churches in the UK.
So just to get the ball rolling more, what local church are you from and what are your duties there in the church?
Yeah, well, I go to a church called The Source, an Elim church called The Source in Malvern, where Elim's HQ is. So my kind of responsibilities are largely national. So every other Sunday, I'll be out and about at a different Elim church around the country, speaking there and sharing about Serious for God there. And then every other Sunday, I'll be back at my local church. So sometimes I'll just be part of the congregation. Sometimes I'll be preaching. Sometimes I'll be leading worship, and but just getting plugged into the life of the local church in that way as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So Serious for God is a youth ministry, right?
That's right, National Youth Department. Yeah.
What is your vision or overall aim for the youth ministry?
Yeah, we say that Serious for God exists to do 3 things. We want to reach young people, we want to equip youth leaders, and we want to inspire dynamic youth ministry through the local church. So everything that we do, all of our events, all of our programming, all of our resourcing, all of our teaching, all of our training, everything that we do is to meet those 3 goals of reaching young people, equipping youth leaders, and inspiring great youth ministry in local churches.
That's really amazing to hear. Why is it now the best time to encourage young people to be serious for God?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a bit of an epidemic of purposelessness, of people who, they don't know why they're alive, what they're living for. And we hear stories in our news at the moment, actually quite regularly, don't we, of young people who essentially are being groomed by terrorist organisations and travelling to foreign countries to fight in these evil wars. And you've got to ask why. I mean, why is that happening? Are these evil people? I don't think so. I think they're people who are looking for a purpose. And what Jesus offers is purpose, is mission, is a goal, is something to live for. And I believe that until you've found something worth dying for, you've not really found something worth living for. And that's the call of God to the lives of young people. So that's why I think this is a time for young people to get serious for God, because it's something, in fact, I'd say the only thing that's really worth living for, really worth giving yourself, giving your life to.
That's really amazing. I'm talking about calling, and as a youth pastor, how challenging can it get sometimes when youth come up to you and say, I need to know the will of God for my life, or I don't know where to go. Like, what do you have to say?
Yeah, and that would be something that all of us, not just young people, have battled with in the course of our lives. And I guess I'd say a few things to encourage a young person in that way. One would be, I think you can get really worried about what God's will for your life is, as though it's some kind of tightrope. If you make one wrong decision or take one wrong turn, that's it, you've fallen off. But actually, what God calls all of us to do, and what the will of God is for all of us, is to join him in his mission. See, God isn't participating in our purposes, we're participating in his. So God calls us to join him in his mission, which is to reach lost people, which is to care for the poor, which is to take the gospel and make disciples of all nations. And so all you've got to do is find out how you play your part in that mission. And so the second thing then I'd encourage young people to do is to discover their own strengths and passions. What are the things that make them tick? What are the things that really make them come alive? And what are the things that they're good at? Because God, you are not the way you are by accident, but because God designed you specifically and deliberately to be who you are. And God has given you everything you need to be who he is calling you to be. So I'd ask young people, what are your passions? What are you really great at? Go and do that, but do it for God.
Yeah.
And that's how you participate in the mission of God. And I think you've taken several steps to discovering the will of God for your life by answering those questions.
That's actually very amazing. So, we're talking about young people. social media is not becoming an epidemic. So we've got things like Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. Of course, we've been using that this week as well.
Yeah.
How would you say that could be a medium for us to evangelize or use that to reach out to people?
Yeah, good question. I think that we're really blessed to live in an age of such connectivity, where we can connect with people from the other side of the world in an instant, really. But I would also so I think that social media provides a great opportunity for evangelism. But I'd also say that social media is not a substitute for relationship, and that social media is used best when it's built on a foundation of relationship. So not when you're just posting random comments, evangelistic statuses, but actually, there's someone who you're friends with at school and they know you're a Christian and you've been talking about faith that day, and then you get home and then you find a great video on YouTube, on a website, and you send them a link over WhatsApp or on Twitter, say, hey, that conversation we were having earlier, well, check out this video. I think that's where social media is best used in evangelism, because it's not a substitute for relationship, but it's a great building block on top of a solid foundation of relationship for evangelism. The first rule of evangelism is love, and how much love is there in posting random statuses, comments, pictures. I don't know that, as Paul said, it's a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal.
Yeah.
It's just noise if it's not based on love. But if it's built on love, and if it comes from love, and if it comes from relationship, great tool.
I mean, that's very amazing because it shows us our mission and our call to actually reach out to individuals as Jesus called us to. And that's really amazing. I've seen that you've got a tattoo.
Yeah.
I'm just really intrigued by it, and I just wanted to know what does it say first? What does it mean?
Yeah, it's Jesus in Hebrew, so Yeshua, which means the Lord saves. And I was inspired by Isaiah 49:16, which says, "See, I have engraved you on the palm of my hand." And I love that sense of God's commitment to me is permanent. It's not going to be erased. And so that was inspiration for it. Also, it's a great conversation starter as well. So, like you've just done now, people often will ask me, "What does that mean?" And it opens up a conversation where I'm able to talk a little bit about Jesus. And the other thing was, I just kind of thought it'd be cool.
I want to actually show the camera how cool it is, and it's really, really cool. It's got colours as well. That's amazing. You're the National Youth Director, and what would you say are how would you say the youth ministry has evolved so far? When I say evolved, I mean when you see maturity. So, for example, you see someone coming to church late often, but then all of a sudden, the passion is growing and all that stuff. How would you say that evolution, that involvement has happened?
Yeah, I think there's over the last 10-15 years, there's been quite a large evolution in that. 10 years ago, all the statistics were saying that 11 to 14 was the age group you really needed to reach if you wanted to see people who had a lifelong commitment to God. Actually now that's kind of changing, and it's 7 to 11. And actually the statistics are telling us that 83% of people who are Christians now, Christians today, made a commitment to God before their teen years. And so I think there's an interesting thing for us to be thinking about as those involved in youth ministry, which is, do we need to extend that journey a little bit? And if you want a great youth ministry, maybe we need to start thinking about having a great kids ministry, reaching kids while they're younger, and then being committed to journey with those children right through into adulthood. If we want to have a generation of young people who walk faithfully with God, not just as young people but for the rest of their lives, I think that's an interesting question we need to ask, and the evolution is not just teens but actually start thinking younger about that as well.
That's really amazing. So essentially starting from a younger age, so Jesus is instilled in their hearts, and as they grow up, that's really amazing as well. So as people who are called by God, we're also talented with giving gifts, the different talents as well. What would you say? What would you advise people to use and use in COP who have talents to be in the world of work, so entrepreneurship, or people working in graphic design? How would you say that lifestyle bridges? What would you advise people to bridge that gap in terms of being a Christian versus being in the world as well?
Yeah, well, to use the couple of examples that you used there, an entrepreneur or a graphic designer, I think sometimes the temptation is to think that if you're a Christian and you're a business person, or you're a Christian and you're a graphic designer, then you need to start a Christian business, or you need to start a Christian graphic design company and do graphic design that says Jesus on all of the things that you've done. But I'm not so sure that that's the case, because I think that one of the best way we can be witnesses, best ways we can make disciples of all nations and join in the mission of God, is just by doing what we do in the very best way that we can do it, being among people who aren't Christians yet, and just them seeing something different in our lives, seeing the diligence with which we put our hands to the plough and bring the best work, with the most creative, with the most hardworking, with the most committed, and seeing that we're people of integrity, that we're people of character, that the things we say and the way that we live match up with each other. And so being in the workplace, and just like we were saying earlier, doing that for God is a real powerful witness. But it all comes back to this thing again of love, because when Jesus said to his disciples, by this one thing will people know that you are my disciples, by this distinctive thing, this is the thing that will mark you out as being my disciples. It wasn't that you would preach the gospel, it was that you would love one another.